Discipline is not motivation. It is not inspiration. It is not a spark of energy that arrives when life feels easy. Discipline is a system, a weapon, a formula forged through repetition, discomfort, and identity. The strongest operators in the world are not the most talented. They are the most consistent. They show up when motivation dies. They execute when comfort tempts them. They honor their standards when no one is watching. And they do this because discipline has become their default state, not their occasional effort. Inside the brain, discipline begins in the basal ganglia, the structure responsible for habit formation and automatic behaviors. Every action repeated with intention becomes a neural pathway. Every pathway repeated becomes a pattern. And every pattern executed long enough becomes identity. The brain learns efficiency. It automates what you do most. Which means discipline is not about forcing yourself through willpower. It's about training the brain so that the actions required for your mission become non-negotiable. But the brain resists change. It fears discomfort. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, burns energy rapidly when confronted with challenge. This is why starting is always harder than continuing, because discipline requires pushing through the initial neural resistance. Operators understand this. They know the hardest part of cold water is the first step. The hardest part of training is tying the laces. The hardest part of the mission is committing to it. Once action begins, the mind follows. The formula for discipline begins with friction, using discomfort as the trigger for growth. Every early morning wake-up, every cold exposure, every training session is a deliberate attack on the brain's craving for ease. Over time, the nervous system adapts. The brain learns that discomfort is not a threat, but a cue for activation, a cue for readiness, a cue for progress. This shift is the foundation of elite consistency. Next is identity. Motivation says, I want to do this. Discipline says, this is who I am. When operators commit to a standard, it becomes part of their self-concept. They no longer negotiate with themselves. They no longer bargain with weakness. Their habits reinforce their identity, and their identity reinforces their habits. The strongest force in human behavior is the desire to remain consistent with the person you believe yourself to be. Discipline is also physiological. Repeated exposure to challenge strengthens the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. The emotional brain stops controlling the logical brain. Over time, the operator becomes less reactive, less impulsive, more stable under pressure. They choose action over avoidance, clarity over chaos, execution over excuses. Consistency is enforced through structure. Soldiers follow routines because structure eliminates decision fatigue. Every decision burns cognitive energy. Too many decisions create mental overload, which destroys discipline. The disciplined eliminate unnecessary choices. They automate their mornings, their training, their nutrition, their recovery. Their freedom comes from the systems they build, not the impulses they follow. The formula continues with accountability. Not external accountability, internal accountability. The quiet promise to oneself that failure to execute is unacceptable. Operators don't need someone checking their work. Their internal standards are higher than any external expectation. They do not rise to the level of the situation, they fall to the level of their training. Emotion cannot lead discipline. The disciplined act regardless of feeling. They do not wait for the perfect moment. They create the moment. They do not rely on motivation. They rely on commitment. They do not fear discomfort. They use it. Each repetition under stress rewires the brain. Each moment of resistance overcome becomes reinforcement for the next challenge. In the field, discipline saves lives. A soldier who shortcuts protocol becomes a liability. A pilot who ignores routine risks catastrophe. Consistency is not optional. It is survival. In everyday life, the stakes may not be as dramatic, but the principle remains. Discipline determines destiny. Every small action compounds into strength, mastery, and control. The final piece of the formula is purpose. Discipline without purpose becomes burnout. Purpose without discipline becomes wishful thinking. When your mission is clear, when your why is stronger than your discomfort, discipline becomes instinct. Operators do not push through pain for the sake of suffering. They push because the mission demands it, because the team depends on it, because their identity requires it. Zeroed In teaches that discipline is not intensity, it is consistency. It is the quiet repetition of small actions that lead to massive transformation. It is doing what needs to be done, especially when the mind seeks escape. It is understanding that freedom is earned through structure, responsibility, and self-command. Discipline is not extraordinary. It is engineered, not an emotion. A system, not a spark. A commitment. The disciplined do not hope for greatness. They build it, one action at a time. And once discipline becomes who you are, nothing can break you.